As a mental health advocate and author, I love books. Books have the capacity to inspire, educate, transform, and ultimately help readers all over the world. So if you want to publish your book or if you need help writing your story, I highly recommend Mindstir Media, rated the #1 best book publisher around the country. Mindstir Media can help you no matter where you are in the book writing or publishing process. Go to mindstirmedia.com to learn more and schedule a consultation.
Out Comes the Sun with Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi. Out Comes the Sun compassionately helps you navigate mental wellness practices that you can apply to your daily life. And we tell your story. And now, Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Out Comes the Sun radio show with my co-host and best friend, Melissa Yamaguchi. Hello, baby. We are excited again to be here with you. And today we kind of really wanted to talk about something that has been pressing on both of our hearts, and especially your heart, because it's kind of really happening in your life. But we're talking about elder abuse. And I'm not talking about that we're being elderly abused, but we are recognizing it in the world, in our own personal lives, and it is something that we need to pay attention to because it is a severe and very deeply disturbing problem in this country, in this world. We do not value our elderly. And they are, in every other custom in the world, every culture, everything until this 20th, 21st century, the elderly that's where we got our stories, our wisdom,
our sages.
I mean, you talk about your mother being a resource for us all the time. Like,
yes.
How many times a week are we talking, I'm going down the beach, you're doing your walk in your neighborhood, and you say, my mother came up with this great idea, right? And we're not valuing those people, and it's wrong. I got to tell you, I want you to tell me what happened to your mom this week, because
I can share. I'll share as much as I can.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got my father-in-law, and then I've got my mom, and two different areas of concern that I have. My father-in-law it goes for physical checkups, for doctor's appointments, for different meetings, and he's been shuffled around a couple of times, and he's 87 years old. And I had one doctor say to me, when I was inquiring on what we were going to do to help him be better, he said to me, well, he is 87, as though to say his life's almost over, or just let it, just make him comfortable. So it infuriated me. And when I expressed stern concern, he looked at me as though, great, I'm gonna have to deal with this person, which frustrated me because you've got to have an advocate for someone who needs help. I have an older brother. I'm the youngest of two older brothers. The middle was born deaf. And I have always been Corey's advocate. We all have fought for Corey in my family to ensure that he had a fair shake. His inability to hear shouldn't hinder him from doing other things in life. So I understand the role of advocacy. So I slip into it quite naturally. My mother, quite capable, still works at the age of 85, goes to work every day, dresses to the nines, is a lovely, wonderful spirit. My mom is a major influence in my life.
And a major brain. I mean, she's so intelligent. So exquisite, and her stories are great.
And well-read, and speaks as though she's talking to me from the cue cards of a 1920s Gloria Swanson silent film, and I'm reading the cue cards. My mother speaks like, how dare you? Yeah. So my mom had something take place in her life that was a huge error made by a major company. So they made an error. They treated my mother's account as though it was an account that had not paid its bills or had not taken care of something. And so they took action against my mother. And my mother became so flustered, so rattled, that she was momentarily not able to think clearly about how to move forward. Now, that can happen to us at any age. But when my older brother and I were stepping in to take over to find out what had happened, the comment that I received was, and you're speaking on her behalf, how I need her to give you permission to speak to me. So I gave my mom the phone, and the gentleman on the other end was just drilling my mother, like, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me this. And my mom could not speak quickly enough to satiate this man. He said, "Ma'am, if you can't answer these questions, I'm not speaking to anybody." And my mom said, "Well, hold on a minute." And I said in the background, "Mom, these are the numbers he's looking for." And he said, "And whoever's coaching you in the background needs to stop." And my mom stood there looking at me, and I could see that my mother was so flustered by this whole source of activity anyway. His beratement, he said, "What's your birth date?" She gives him her birth date. "What's your social security?" He goes, "Let's try this. Let's give you an easy one. What's your social security number?"
No, he didn't.
And yes, and because yes, it was brutal. And as he's speaking, I can see my mother reciting her social security number, but the words weren't coming out. He said, I'm gonna have to hang up. And she finally blurted out her social security number. And he said, "All right, good job. Now I can talk to the other person." Mariel, it was with everything within my power to not lose my proverbial poop on this guy. I tried my hardest to maintain decorum so that I could get the end result that I needed. Because he could have easily hung up. We'd already been on hold for 40 minutes to get to this person. He could have hung up and then all would have been lost. So I had to play the game and act as though nothing had happened while watching my mom out of the side of my eye sit down on the chair, and you could just see her questioning her worth, questioning her value. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for me as a
Can't
kid.
imagine. She's such an exquisite human that it is so wrong. It is such a travesty. I'm crying too. I mean, we're both crying.
It was a horrible thing to witness. And I thought, my God, when we as a society overlook our sages, our wise elders who have walked the path. My mom, God love her, is 85 years old. My dad's 88. He'll tell you if you call him. He'll pick up the phone and answer it and tell you how old he is. Just a little sidebar. My dad answers the phone reciting his age. Ring, we'll do a little play acting. Ring, 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 ring. Hello? This is Travis Chambers. I'm 88 years old today. In 24 months, I'll be in my 9th decade. I'm in my 9th decade. I'll be entering he gives you a up to date right then on how old he is. He's very proud of it. So my mom, but watching my mother, who has marched for other people's rights, who has been a stellar educator to this day, students reach out to her that she taught when she was in her early 30s. She's made an impact on people's lives. And even if my mom had done nothing, but had never worked outside of the home, but raised her family and done a great job, whatever my mom has done, it doesn't matter. There doesn't need to be a list of criteria. She doesn't need to have a resume of worth for people to treat her sweetly and kindly as a human. So when we dismiss our elders, there's that adage that in order to understand where you're going, you have to understand where you've been. But where we've been are our elders. And when we as a society dismiss our elders, dismiss our impoverished, dismiss our handicapped, dismiss our people who have differences, what that speaks to who we are as humans is a sad mark on humanity. So my quest is to highlight this, like you and I do. You and I talk about this because this matters.
Does matter. And I think having awareness, I mean, we're not asking you to go out and, do something, but the doing is when you see somebody who's elderly, when you like maybe sit down and listen, maybe hear their story, maybe be a little kinder when they're, slow crossing the street, maybe be a little kinder when they're driving on the right side of the road and going a little bit slower than you would like to go.
Right.
Remember, that, everybody's on their path, and they have been on this planet a lot longer.
Yep.
And they deserve your respect.
And
They
with your good luck, you'll be at their age one day, and you'll want
Yeah.
someone to treat you as kindly. And if they repeat themselves, allow them to. Allow them to. It's fine. I found myself in the beginning, candidly and vulnerably sharing here, that I would get frustrated when my mom would repeat herself. I said, "Mom, you just told me that story." And I'd think, "What?" And then I realized she's not telling me this because she's trying to irritate me, or she's just flippantly forgetting something. She's repeating it because she may have forgotten that she said it earlier, and that's okay. My dad, on the other hand, I said, "Dad, you told me, you told me this story earlier." He said, "I know. I by God told you that it was good the first time. You're going to hear it the second, and a third and fourth if I want to share it. I don't care how many times I've told you." So whatever is happening, by exerting this kindness from you, it comes back to you, and we have to just share kindness with our elders that are fortunate enough to be here and from whom we can learn.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that. And don't go away, because next we have an incredible guest. We really do. She's a lovely, lovely girl. And I think you're going to love hearing from her. So come right back to Out Comes the Sun with Mariel Hemingway, myself, and my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi. Welcome back to Out Comes the Sun, and we have such an amazing guest. Her name is Lunden Souza, and I've had the great pleasure of being in the same room with her, listening to her share some of her wisdom about NLP. She's a master NLP practitioner. She's a life coach, and a podcast host. She is really quite incredible and was very helpful to me, because we have a project that we're doing on something called NABA, which is a lifestyle kind of platform, and they're creating classes. And she was super helpful to me, who is not technology like strong. So anyway, but I want to tell you a little bit about Lunden, because it's actually an incredibly poignant story. She has worked in the fitness and health industry for over 15 years. She's very young, so wow. 17 years ago, she found herself really struggling. She was a full-time college student, part-time personal trainer, working various other jobs. She was working literally 7 days a week. I'm sure many of you have heard this story and felt this story. Lunden, like most of us, was stuck in this more is more mentality, and more workouts, more rigid diets, more, wow, I do know that, more meal prepping, more hours working, more hustle, more clients, more perfection, just more everything. And she was exhausted. So I can totally relate to that, to the way she was living her life, just like constantly trying to outdo herself, like perfection. So she decided she needed to change. So she moved abroad to Austria, which I think is super cool. And she started working at Runtastic, thinking something new would give her a new perspective. And yet she found herself once again stuck in this more is more spiral. Even though she was in Austria. She was working a ton of hours, taking on too many roles, saying yes to everything. And she realized this wasn't working, and she was either feeling guilty or sleeping because she was so tired. So despite changing her physical location, it didn't change her mentality. I can so relate. So she changed her path. And now we get to find out how she changed her path and what she's doing now to create a life of energy and excitement and moving forward. So welcome our very special guest, Lunden Souza.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mariel, Melissa. So happy to be here.
Oh, it's so fun to have you.
Those who are listening are going to need to tap over to the visual at some point and see Lunden's got the most amazing smile. It kind of just lights up the whole room. You got to check that out.
I know.
Thanks. And we did a little teeth check before we went live. So I'm glad we all have good smiles and nothing in our teeth.
Exactly. So I guess we'll just dive into kind of your journey. So you were stuck again. There you were in Austria, and even though it was amazing, it was also you were stuck in Austria during the pandemic. So that was something too. You're in a country, far away, and you weren't happy. You had a lot of anxiety. You had lost your way. You had lost your passion. So what happened next to you?
Mhm. Yeah. I love that you read that, because that's kind of in my mind. Have this visual of like this Rolodex of just like a whole movie wheel just went through of everything that you just described. And I'm a little bit sweaty, not because I'm nervous, but because that was like so profound in my life. And I think what I can really say is, until I realized that I didn't have to, I was living a life of I'm supposed to X, Y, or Z. Right. And I think the way that I grew up in a very, strict Italian family, work is your worth, more is more, do more, that's where I found myself. I started, working out in personal training when I was like 17, 18, had moved away to college. And it was really like anytime I felt anything, the answer was do more. So if I was like excited or motivated, let's go. If I was sad, feeling a little bit depressed or down or needed recovery time, that wasn't okay. You need to do more. And I remember one time being so excited to tell my grandpa in college, going to school full time, I'm working 7 days a week. Like that was a badge of honor for me to be like, I'm in school full time, getting good grades, and I am, working 7 days a week and doing all those things. And so I think sometimes environmental changes do help. I think that sometimes switching our environment, even if it's like the way that things are arranged in our homes or maybe where we might live, can be helpful, as long as there's awareness that we're using this shift in environment to mean something. But I just found myself like in that fight, flight, or freeze. I was very much like the flight person. It's like do more and go somewhere else and do something different, and that'll change everything. So I think when I was living in Austria, it was a really good opportunity for me to utilize a lot of my gifts. I'm very grateful for a lot of the responsibility and roles that I played in that startup that I was working for that you mentioned, Runtastic. But at the same time, there was a lot of old programming that was weighing me down. And I remember living in Austria, it was a startup. So we really grew at a rapid pace, and I was the face of the company. And I remember the first time we had we called it the big shoot. So we were a startup, kind of doing everything with our phones, whatever, some equipment we could have, but we finally had grown to a space where, we had the budget, and we went to Paris and Barcelona and Munich. So we did 3 countries in 6 days. And I just remember being there, and I had grabbed this book by Brendan Burchard called High Performance Habits. And I just like dove into this book. And I remember like getting my makeup done and getting my hair done in between sets, like glued to this book. And what that book taught me was something I had never seen, like manifest in the people that I was around, which is that you can be successful, you can, have all the things and still be happy and have positive relationships and not feel like you're doing the most. And I had never seen that before. I saw people who worked all the time, and if you weren't working, you were lazy. And if you, all these things. So I just really think I found myself in that moment, like questioning all of my programming, like just being like, why do I believe that I have to do that? Why does work equal my worth? Why does, being success and have money mean that I have to work my life away and not treat people well? Or why does money mean that you control others? Like I just had seen all these different, it was almost as if like strings were connecting each one of them. And I was just like snipping them one by one. And so working in the fitness and wellness space for many years, I realized that a lot of people are trying to fix the inside by working on the outside. It's like, if I can just get like my abs tight and this jiggly part off my arm away, then I'll be happy. And then, the rainbow will come and all my dreams will come true. And I realized that's not the case, right? I mean, I think, Mariel, when you're reading my intro and I just from knowing is like, there's, it's just like, you think you can fix one thing and it's going to fix the other thing when it comes to our physical stuff. And then that led to, that knowledge that like, okay, once we realize that we can't fix the inside by working on the outside, right? And we have this transformation in our lives, I struggled with, and then I also was working with people who struggled with communicating that to the outside world. And how do you hold boundaries to the person you know you are and who you want to be? And how do you express that to people that you love in a way that's honest and respectful, right? And I failed time and time and time again, being like, this is who I am, that's not who I am anymore. Stop it, And I just found myself like, okay. And at that point in my life, I was like, okay, like, whatever. I look great. I have no complaints about my physical body, but like my physical body in the real world is like showing up like, not the way that I want to, very aggressive, very like non-connecting. And so that's why I dove into the world of NLP and communication and life coaching. Cause I was like, okay, it's great that your body looks a certain way, Lunden, and that people are like, oh, I like your shoulders. And like, like Melissa, great smile or certain things, but like, what do you actually feel like? And then what are people actually feeling like when they're around you? And then I wanted to help others do that too, because, being in that fitness space, you see a lot of people who look good, but like do not feel good, and who look at themselves and look at the world, with all these, like I was, these supposed to's, or I should be a certain way. And so, yeah, that just really is kind of how it went. It went from like, fitness to, okay, now I feel good and I feel good in this body, but then it wasn't showing up in the world in the way that I knew I could. Right. And especially with family and relationships and all these repeated patterns and recurrent obstacles and all these, loops that we can hopefully identify in our lives and have awareness of. That was like the most profound ever. And I was just like, I want to figure out a way to talk the talk and walk the walk and have it be super congruent with who I know Lunden is,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. It's overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming in such a good way, because I really think that you did find things. What were some of the, what would you say is kind of one of the basic things that you did first that kind of helped you get out of that fight or flight? Not just reading a book, because we can all read a book, but it's like, what was the action that you took that helped you to make those steps towards your peace and happiness?
One of the steps was to leave my job at that Austrian startup that I was working at. I had been there for 8 years, loved it, didn't really have a reason to leave other than I just had this feeling inside that it was time, and my mom will often tell me, Lunden, if you're feeling froggy, it's time to jump. And so I think that the big step that I made was just like trusting in who I knew I was becoming. And even though it was scary and I was nervous and I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, I kind of left at the peak of my career, if you will. Like the company had gotten bought by Adidas. Like I had hosted workout events in like 13 different countries. Thousands of people would come for these live workout parties. And I stepped away thinking I was going to leave it all. But the cool thing is that I actually didn't have to leave it all. So up until COVID, they were still like, okay, even though you're not going to work for the company, do you still want to do these workout events? Do you still want to? So it was a confirmation to me of like, okay, I don't have to do everything. I can be in my area genius. But people are not going to recognize that for me until I recognize it for myself. They weren't going to be like, hey, Lunden, we feel like you're doing a lot. You should probably step away from this and only do what you're really passionate about. Like nobody does that for you. We have to do that for ourselves. And so I think that was a really big leap moment for me, because I was like, oh, not only do I see what I know I'm good at, but by me speaking that and taking that next step, I actually had a really great opportunity to kind of have the best of both worlds, to have my cake and eat it too, if you will. And up until COVID, that's really like kind of how it was. And so I think taking that leap when we're uncertain, taking that leap when not all the ducks are in a row and not all the things are in line, I think that's probably what was my greatest thing. And I know that sounds really scary, and it probably is bringing up feelings of, whatever might, anyone listening might be feeling. But I really think that was the big step, is like taking the leap in uncertainty, taking the leap knowing that I believed in my capabilities to figure it out,
Yeah.
but I didn't have to know it all right in that moment. All I had to know is like, this is not congruent with me. So I need to take that one little baby step, or in my case, it was kind of a big step, but in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty baby, but like a little step in the direction of where I want to go, instead of just kind of in that analysis paralysis, you know?
Yeah. I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking about all the phases that you were going through, from the pressure that you had on you at 17 and 18 becoming a personal trainer, and not to mention the fact that you were in college. So when you were in 17 and 18 as a trainer, you were studying for SATs, ACTs, you were keeping your GPA up, you were worried about your entrance resume into the college arena. Then you're in college working all these hours, and I'm there with you, so I'm breaking out in a sweat a little bit because I'm realizing all this stuff that you're going through, and society places so much pressure on us to keep up, to do more. And as you talked about, the more and more. My question for you is, that pressure doesn't stop. So once someone becomes, for the sake of keeping the identity the same here, a young wife, a young mother, or an older wife, an older mother, whatever it is, then you become a parent, and then there's pressure on you for not only the pressure that you have for you, but also to maintain your child and to maintain your home and to maintain your lifestyle. And it doesn't stop from womb to tomb. It does not stop. So my question for you is, what tools can you share with our audience? And for me, quite frankly, I've got a pen ready. I'd like them also. What tools for releasing that pressure, aside from that scary step? But once you've made the step to change, the vices keep squeezing. So what are some mantras or tools you have, Lunden? I'd love to know.
Yeah, you're right. I'll also say too, I'm not married. I don't have kids, and I always take my hat off to parents. I work with a lot of parents and grandparents. And sometimes I even ask myself, like, why me? Like, why am I but I own kind of that purpose, if you will. I think one major thing to look at is like, what do you think? What was the word that you used? You said, wasn't resistance. You said pressure. I think that we have to look at our internal representation of what pressure is, right? If we think that pressure is hard and that it requires, relentless hours, and it means and looks and feels like this, well, then we're going to have that. But if we decide that pressure is motivating, or pressure is, what helps us focus and stay present and kind of get things done, then I think we have to really work to shift that internal representation of what we think pressure means. I remember working with a client where she didn't want to be stressed, and she just kept saying, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. And I'm like, well, do you want to be stressed? And she's like, well, no, who wants to be stressed? And I'm like, well, what do you want to feel? And she was kind of, triggered or annoyed and, went away, whatever. She comes back and she goes, I got a better word. She's like, I was at a colonics appointment, and the lady that was doing my colonics said, I'm not stressed, I'm challenged. And I was like, okay, how does challenged for you feel? And she's like, oh, that feels good, because I like going after challenges. I know that I can perform in a situation where I am challenged. So I think, to give a takeaway, it's kind of like you have to ask yourself what it means if you are that. And do you want to be that? If not, what do you want to be? And what does that look like? And I think I know people are listening, but some are watching. And Melissa, I saw your body language just kind of like, and kind of, it resonated, right? It has to feel congruent. I can't tell you, hey, Melissa, just don't feel stressed, or don't feel, this pressure, because like, that's not, and I think people get that misconception a lot about life coaches, that like life coaches give advice. I think I'm just really good at asking questions about what people make it mean and how they want to feel and what that looks like. There has to be the congruence between like the thought, the feeling, and the action. And so that would be definitely one of them. The other thing I think is really important is core values. I don't think people know what they stand for, so they get pulled in every direction by everything. And it's like, I find that core values are the rules to your game so that you can win. Core values help you decide how you're going to show up, how you're not going to show up, and when it's time to set boundaries. And I think that oftentimes with the parents that I work with, they end up in this go, 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 do all the things. They know exactly what they don't want to feel. I don't want to be stressed. I don't want to have to do the dishes. I don't want to have to do all the things, but they don't take the time until they do to sit down and be like, okay, well, how do I want to feel? And that's why I love core values. I always do that with my clients. It's kind of like their own version of their commandments. It's just like, and it's really cool when we do this, because even though you create it for yourself, and I've seen this for myself and with my clients, there's this adherence to their core values. It's like, it becomes something that means something to them that they can't help but not follow. And it's crazy because they implemented it. And most of the time, especially in fitness, it's right. I want someone to tell me what to do and tell me how to feel and just tell me the right diet and tell me the right workouts and I'll just do it. But people don't do that. They have to create what works for them. And so I like to hold that container to be like, okay, cool. How do you want to feel? And like, let's get really real about it, right? We'll spend a couple hours getting congruent in their core values. And then I always say, make them with your partner, make them in your family. Like, what do you guys stand for? How do you guys know when it's time to, when it's time to be in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, or when we need to kind of fill in the roles and fill in the gaps for the people that we love. And so I think that core values is really helpful too, because it helps us decide, okay, how do I want to be? How do I want to show up? How can I recognize it? I say, how can you spot the not? Right? We can when we have our core values, it's like, how can you really quickly spot that's not in alignment with my core values? I need to take a hard left. I need to say a hard pass. I need to say no to this. Right. And that takes practice, right? We have to take our core values out into the real world, which is what I personally struggled with. I'm like, how do I be this in the real world? I know, but I didn't know until I sat down and I said, no, I have core values of honesty, of magnetic faith, of, just like a lot of, my personal core values, to bring them to life so that I knew what that looked like. If not, we're just running around doing everything and nothing, waiting for someone to like tell us what to do and how to feel. And it just becomes like this whirlwind, So like I said, the reframe of the words and then core values, I feel like are really powerful.
I have a quick interjection, if I may also. To add to that, because your foundation has been strong. It sounds as though when I'm listening, you're working out at a young age already. So this puts you in a good mental, healthy, physical state, even though you had emotional things that you were struggling with until you identified them. You had a good foundation, it sounds like, with family. You had, a mom who says, if you feel froggy and leap is a woman in my book. So this is a good mom. You had good foundational background. You had people in your corner. And I'm sure you have worked with clientele who have started with less than, who have come into with a shakier foundation, less of a sense of who they are, understanding core values. I know you have to work with them and pull that out. And so my takeaway from what you're saying is I think oftentimes what people will do is they look at a life coach, they look at someone from whom they could learn, and they think, well, everything's perfect over here. She won't understand me. And what you're saying is so translatable across the board from whatever background, financial background, emotional background of an addiction, background of pain, people are coming from. This is translatable for all of their lives. And so I want our audience to not get wrapped up in the fact that, yes, I was joking in the front and said, get on and look at London's beautiful smile. Yes, your physical presence is wonderful, but I want them to know that the value that you're bringing can be translated to every every position in life. It's so important.
Yeah. I did luck out in the parents department. I definitely did. I have great parents. My dad was a coach. He raised me like a coach. And I'm realizing that now, where it was like, yeah, just get back in the game. No whining. Let's go. So that was part of my programming. I'll also share too. I had this idea of what family was, and I thought that family was a sturdy ground. And when it was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, I was dating somebody that my grandpa didn't approve of because he had tattoos. My grandpa doesn't like tattoos. He ripped me from the family. I wasn't invited to go to certain activities. He called my mom and wanted to, take her out of the will and do all these things because of my decision. So I know what it feels like to have what I think is a stable foundation ripped out from under me. And that was a huge breaking moment for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I thought was my support system that I could lean on actually wasn't. And all the family members, even though they didn't agree, let's say with him, nobody was speaking up for me. You know, I came all the way from Austria to go to my cousin's twins' birthday party, and my grandpa threw a fit and I couldn't go to the party. Like, what? And no one said, what do you mean you can't go to the party? Grandpa, you can't come. London flew in from Austria for the twins' birthday party. What do you mean? So yeah, I know it.
Isn't that a testimony to the fact that your direction and your path in life has to come from you?
Yes,
right?
You so I
have
thought
to get to your basics, just like you said, your core values. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's striking me, because we talk about, Melissa and I, think about what you want, not what you don't want. And, and how your focus in life has to be, and you have to listen to that voice, that internal voice, but you also have to recognize what that voice is. And sometimes we're so clouded by the traumas, the this, the that, the past, the history, whatever it is, that we don't hear that voice. So so your coaching, I think, must be really effective in helping people recognize their own inner voice.
Yeah. And I think too, what feels like ripped out the rug ripped out from under me, for me, can look and feel different for everybody. Right. So I'm sure that if we looked on a scale of better or worse or whatever, but I shared that story. I don't think I've ever shared it in that capacity, but I feel safe here to do that, because I did think that one thing was one way, and then realized no. And then I had to rebuild that, from within, without the sturdy family structure that I thought that I had and all these things. And yes, well, I did feel like I lucked out in the parents department. There was a lot of things that just like tipped over like toothpicks, and I think too, that common ground is really the empathy. No, I don't know. Even if somebody else's grandpa did the exact same thing to them, I don't know what that's like, because they're different than me. Right. So it's not my job to say, I know what's best for you, but I'm relentless in the pursuit of being a really good life coach and NLP practitioner. And I like to listen and I like to ask questions, because I believe that I don't have the answers, that you already have the answers in you. It's just that we've been in our own programming and going down our own autopilots, that until someone sits down and asks us different questions. I was just on a call with a person right before this, having a session, who had gone through PTSD from the military. I'll never know that. Had a near-death experience. I'll never know that. Has a kid. I don't want to have kids, so I'll never know that. Right. And she told me after this, oh my gosh, this is the most profound session I've ever had in my life. I have to work with you. And she's been in therapy and all these different things, not because I know what it's like to be in the military or know those things. I just know what it's like to listen. And I know what questions to ask to help you realize it for yourself.
Well, you're guiding people to their best selves, and regardless of what their background is, whether they have tattoos or not, whether they're in the military, have children, whatever their background is, you're guiding them to their best self. And I think that's one of the best jobs you can have. Hats off. It's amazing.
Yeah. You're such an incredible person. It's so fun to talk to you, because those are the kind of, you share some very, you share some core values that Melissa and I kind of talk about and think about in our own lives, being best friends, being mothers, being whatever it is. But I love that, I don't have those experiences in my life, but I'm here to listen. And it just, for me, when somebody says they can listen, and I can tell that you can, because I've spent time with you, you are a listener, and you do, but you listen with your whole heart, right? You're open. Like you don't know what the direction is to go, but you listen wholeheartedly so that you can help them find that direction. Because you did it very subtly with me a couple of times when we were in Denver doing something together. So we're just honored to have you. Like, literally, your words are so poignant and so helpful. I hope that everybody listening just tries to connect with you, and we will give all the ways that you can connect with you, so that they can really, like, you should have you as a life coach.
Do it, audience, do it.
London. Just sign up. Thank you so much, Lunden. we love you. Please come back, but you're a friend, so you will.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love what you guys do in the world. I'm honored to be in the space with you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
Awesome.
And stay there because next we're going to have a tip from my co-host and best friend, Melissa Yamaguchi, on energy. Thank you.
You're listening to Out Comes the Sun. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm Melissa Yamaguchi, and I'm here as a co-host with my friend Mariel Hemingway. Ugh, I got an issue there. Okay, so that was such a great conversation with Lunden. I'm so happy that she shared with us, and she left a line on there that kind of slid in, and you got to know, Mariel, I was chewing on the side of my tongue and should not comment. She said that a client of hers had gone to get a colonic and came up with a good idea.
I know this
right?
is a different section, but boy, I heard the same thing.
Yeah. So all I kept thinking was, when in doubt, flush it out. When in doubt, flush it out. Oh, good luck. Okay, here's to colonics. All right. So my tip for you today in feng shui is this. You've got to take stock and inventory of your clothing in your closets. Every closet in the house, from the entry closet to whatever, if you store things in the garage to the children's closets, or if you live alone and it's just your closet, you have to take stock. We, not only as a society do we have excess, and Lunden was talking about more is more, and this constant pressure of us to have more and more and more, it's also collecting more and more. And what this does, when your closets are weighted down with clothing and items you no longer wear or use, your purses, your belts, your jewelry, whatever you store in your closets, unless it's a collector's item, like you're collecting really great watches or something. If you have items in your closet that are weighing you down, it literally energetically leaves you no room for growth. I'm not talking about larger sizes of clothing. I'm talking about it leaves you no room for any form of expansion. If the closets are stuffed to the gilt, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to clients' homes, walked into their closets. There'll be price tags still hanging on clothing. The plastic bags from a dry cleaner still hanging over them. First of all, get that out of the house, and don't even take the plastic dry cleaner bags into your home if you can, please. But they've got this stuff all in their closet, and there's no rhyme or reason to the storage units. And I am not, the container store organizer for the closet, but I can do that. But when I walk in, the first thing we do is identify what is it you like and don't like about your closet. How many of these items? I'll randomly grab something. When's the last time you wore this? Right. So what I know is that when they take everything out of the closet, and that's that Marie Kondo format too, but it's very feng shui also. When you take everything out and you take full stock of what you have, Marie Kondo goes a step further and says, let the items speak to you. I oftentimes am working with clientele who are wanting me to move quicker. So, and I admire Marie Kondo's methods. I do. However, you know what you've not worn. I've seen different techniques. I think there was something spilling around on TikTok at one point. The gal said every time she wears an item, she puts it back in the closet and hangs it backwards. So that at the end of the year, all the items that are still hanging forward, she realizes she hasn't worn them in a year, and she then makes a decision on whether or not to get rid of them. That's a cool tip. But honesty is required. We will hold on to things because it looked really good on us, back in, do you remember? So we hold on to old clothing, but you've got to take stock of your inventory. You've got to remove things that you're not wearing. There are people out there who could benefit from what you no longer are utilizing in your life, and it gives you room to breathe and grow yourself. And that's my tip. Now listen, don't go anywhere. Don't shut this off and go get a colonic. Come back. Listen to Mariel. Mariel Hemingway is going to give you great advice on health. Come back next. Out Comes the Sun.
Welcome back, everyone. And I'm glad you didn't go get a colonic and you're back with us now. So exciting. I have a tip for you, and it's very similar to kind of what Melissa was talking about in her tip about go through your old stuff and get rid of things you don't need that don't serve you, because it does weigh heavily. And I really want you to start thinking about, my tip is really more about being conscious of the thoughts that don't serve you, right? We have so many thoughts, and I think we've discussed this before. We have so many thoughts. We talked about this with John Sani, and we'll probably talk about it with him again. But, we have these thoughts, and probably for most people, 80 to 90,000 of them you're going to rethink again tomorrow. So this repeating of thoughts, and with thoughts, and I've talked about this before, but with the more you think a thought, it becomes a belief. So my tip is really about become aware and conscious of your thoughts. The thoughts that are negative, the ones that are weighing you down. I was on my walk this morning, and it was beautiful. It was a sunny day, and it wasn't supposed to be sunny, so I was so grateful. And then I found myself, I had a moment where I was thinking about something, and somebody came past me and their dog, whatever, and Melissa will understand this. Their dog came close to my dog, and I was like, I ran over and I said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Right. That sounds innocuous, but I have an issue with apologizing. Right. And I apologize a lot for other people's actions, my own actions that I shouldn't apologize for. It's a habit that I want to change. And so in my meditations, I say, here's a thought that I don't want to think anymore, and a behavior that I don't want to behave like anymore. And I don't want to apologize all the time. I don't want to apologize for myself. I don't want to apologize all the time, because it's like saying, I'm sorry, I'm here, make me small. And if you don't know me, I come from a family where a lot of my life I felt invisible. So I apologized a lot as a child. And gosh, here I am in my 6th decade, still sometimes it's not as bad as it used to be, but I'm still sometimes apologizing for myself. I'm apologizing for taking up space in the world or something. And that's a childhood. That's not my story anymore, right? That's not who I am. I don't need to do that. So I just invite you to become aware of those thoughts that really don't serve you. And then as you become aware of them, it's like this trigger. It's like, bing, and a little light goes off in your brain. And then you can say, oh, I can redo this. I don't need to do that anymore. Right. And it's not about, shaming yourself for doing it. It's just about the awareness will then make it easier each time you, quote unquote, apologize for yourself, as I would do, and say, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm going to keep my mouth closed. And in my meditation, I often will see my behavior is that I just stay still and quiet instead of saying I'm sorry, right? I imagine that in my head so that I can manifest that throughout the day. So my tip is be aware, stay aware of how you're thinking, because your thoughts become beliefs, and your beliefs can change your life. So you can change those thoughts, and you get to have the life that you want to lead by the choices that you make and the thoughts that you think. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. And this was a great show. What an interesting and I don't know.
It was full. Didn't it feel full?
Really full. It feels really, and it feels like, yeah, I feel satisfied.
Yeah, big 12-course meal. Big 12-course meal. No, thank you. We don't have room for dessert.
No, exactly. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to us, listening to Out Comes the Sun, and to Melissa Yamaguchi, my incredible co-host, and myself, Mariel Hemingway. I want to shout out to our executive producer, Jeremiah Higgins, our other producer, Slater Smith. Whoa, Slater Smith, and Richard Dugan, Dr. D. Thank you so much. All of the people that helped make this happen. We are very grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Out Comes the Sun has been a production of Evolve Entertainment. Hosts Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi. Executive producer Jeremiah Higgins. And sound engineer and producer Richard Dr. D. Dugan. Thank you for listening.